May 6th, 2011. The day Spider-Man fans would be waiting for since 2007. The release of Spider-Man 4. Despite the wobbly reception of Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man fans were not deterred from speculating and musing about what would be next in store for Spidey. Most commonly speculated were the villains of the Lizard and Carnage. The Lizard felt appropriate given that we'd already shown Dr. Connors in Spider-Man 2 and 3, and Carnage not so much, but maybe the idea that some of the symbiotes survived from Spider-Man 3. Either way, this would mark a new chapter for Peter Parker. The dynamic between him and Harry Osborn that served as a driving force of tension in the previous films was now laid to rest. Uncle Ben's killer is now forgiven, and Peter and MJ are picking up the pieces of their broken lives. Sam Raimi had stated that he really wanted to focus on quality for Spider-Man 4, admitting that he felt Spider-Man 3 did not release in a desirable state. The wait from May 2007 to May 2011 would feel excruciating were it not cut short by 1 year, as in January of 2010, the next Spider-Man movie was announced for a 2012 release. The Lizard would be the main villain, Harry Osborn would not be present, but this wasn't Spider-Man 4. This was something completely different, a reboot. However, before we dive into the adventures of a brand new Spider-Man, let's talk about what we know of the ill-fated Spider-Man 4 that never came to be.
Mamma mia, you made it this far into the video and you still haven't subscribed? What in the name of spaghetti and meatballs is this all about?
F you, boy, why you not subscribe to the channel, pup, yeah? And click on the link in the Patreon in the description below, or I'll fucking kill you, boy. Don't fucking test me.
That's a one spicy meatball.
Yes, it is.
Between 2007 and 2010, the cast and crew of the Spider-Man movies weren't just sat about eating Cheetos and playing James Pond Robocod for the Sega Mega Drive. Much work and deliberation was underway, and they seem to have landed on a concept and story that they would be moving forward with, at least so far as to make it to storyboarding, sculpting, and some hypothetical casting choices. Despite rumors of Tobey Maguire's departure after Spider-Man 3, both he and Kirsten Dunst would be returning for Spider-Man 4. Joining the cast would be Felicia Hardy, aka the Black Cat, as portrayed by either Anne Hathaway or Angelina Jolie, as well as the Vulture, played by John Malkovich, with scripts being handled by James Vanderbilt, David Lindsay-Abaire, and Gary Ross. Now, it does need to be made as clear as possible that there are a lot of dots that are not yet connected, given that we do not know who would be responsible for specific drafts of the script, but we do have enough material to piece together a vague, basic plot. That being said, no, the version of Spider-Man 4 that we will be discussing today would never have made it to theaters. After reading through numerous script drafts, Sam Raimi was unable to land on a single draft that he felt happy with, and grew exhausted by the deliberation involved in making a Spider-Man 4. Given that he was still unsatisfied with what he was making, the chances are, if a Spider-Man 4 ever were to make it to the screen, it would likely have very little in common with the story that we are discussing in this video. But there is time to theorize about that. What we have here are storyboards by artist Jeffrey Henderson. Henderson worked closely with Raimi on Spider-Man 4 and revealed a small selection of the storyboards that he was allowed to share, stating that Raimi is incredibly superstitious when it comes to the sharing of storyboards. Henderson would say that Spider-Man 4 would have been one absolutely kick-ass movie. He added that from top to bottom, everyone felt that Spider-Man 3 was a bit of a missed opportunity and that they all wanted to help Raimi to take Spider-Man 4 to another level. So that, should it be the end of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man's adventures, the series could at least go out on a high note. Now look, it is worth noting, whatever my own opinions of the information we have in this video are going forward, I am not in any capacity going to try to argue with Jeffrey Henderson. He knows all about this movie, more about it than myself or any journalist or any YouTuber. The man knows the whole story of this ill-fated movie. I will be showing more of the storyboards as we go through what we currently understand of the story of Spider-Man 4, but for now, we can see here that a new suit was being considered for Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, one harkening back a little bit more to the classic Spider-Man, to the Ditko days, something more simple and believably homemade. It would be interesting to see how downgrading to a more convincingly homemade suit in-universe would be explained. Personally though, I think the suit that we have in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films is the definitive suit of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and any replacement would really just be a footnote in the grand scheme of things. Heck, I think when most people think movie Spider-Man, the original Raimi Spider-Man suit is the one they're thinking of first. It's the definitive cinematic Spider-Man costume. So let's talk a bit about this plot then. Now, again, this information comes from a slew of different sources and interpretations, so chances are some of this information may be inaccurate, but this is just going off of what we have here, and I'll be giving my thoughts along the way. So we've got a bit of a more seasoned Spider-Man now, working his way through the Spider-Man rogues gallery bit by bit, bringing them to justice. In a montage, we'd see Spider-Man bringing Mysterio, as played by Bruce Campbell, to the NYPD, as well as apprehending other enemies including the Rhino and Shocker. Now before you cry too many villains, these would all just be quick cameos for characters that they had no larger plans for. Which would be unfortunate, as I think Mysterio would be ripe for the Raimi treatment, but hey, what do I know? This would at least expand Spidey's rogues gallery to include some villains that don't find out Peter's secret identity and don't die. Peter has also finally landed a decent job at Citicorp, working under his boss, Adrian Toomes. Little does Peter know that Adrian Toomes lives a double life as the Vulture, trying to gain control of New York's criminal underworld. It's unknown as to whether or not the Vulture would wear some kind of mask or disguise or something. He certainly doesn't in the artwork. Maybe when he was just Adrian Toomes he wore a wig or something. I've got no idea. But Peter doesn't seem to know that Adrian Toomes is the Vulture, and nor do the people at Citicorp. On top of this, all is not well between Peter and MJ. Alright, what do you got for me this time? As Peter's new colleague at Citicorp, Felicia Hardy, is stirring up some sensations in the old web slinger.
If you know what I'm talking about.
Leading Peter to have an affair with Felicia. Alright, I'm just gonna stop right here to say, if this had happened, worst Spider-Man movie ever. Like, you have 2 movies of Peter wanting to be with MJ, a third one where he ruins it all, but the two end up willing to forgive, only for Peter to cheat on MJ in Spider-Man 4. That is really a gross way to handle this relationship. Also, I'm really not fond of Peter outright cheating to the extent of having a full-on affair, and no, this would not be some black suit story. After we saw Peter sink horrendously low in Spider-Man 3, I feel like this would just not be palatable in the slightest. It'd be bad enough having our hero Peter Parker be an adulterer, even worse after 3 movies of him straining himself to find a way to be with MJ. Like, just the whole plot of Spider-Man 2 would just be completely cheapened by this. You know what I could accept though? Spider-Man 3 brought out the worst in Peter. MJ has seen the worst of what he's capable of, how low he can sink. These aren't things that you can just undo. If off-screen Peter and MJ tried to make things work for a little bit but just couldn't shake what went on in the past and decided to move forward as friends, and then Felicia is his new love interest, making things a tad awkward between Peter and MJ, but not bringing this character to the point of cheating, that'd be far more digestible. I mean, that may well have been how it would have played out. We don't know. Again, misinterpretations can happen. Drafts of scripts do change and evolve over time. I haven't actually been so fortunate as to read this script anyway. So this could be a load of bull honky. Anywho, Felicia, in a twist, happens to be the adopted daughter of Adrian Toomes. So I don't know necessarily how many action sequences there would be between Peter and Vulture. Maybe there'd just be the one, and that would explain how Peter doesn't know that Adrian Toomes is the Vulture sooner. But in these storyboards by Jeffrey Henderson, we got lots of action shots. A big helicopter pursuit going after the Vulture. Spider-Man flinging gargoyles at him. Him dropping an unmasked Spider-Man from a great height. Also, check off yet another villain who knows Spider-Man's secret identity. Even so, these action sequences looked really cool. And at some stage in the middle of the film, Spider-Man and Vulture would have a climactic battle atop the Citicorp building. We've got these animatics here which showcase easily the most brutal fight Spider-Man would have ever had on the big screen. Vulture just brutalizing Spider-Man atop the shattering glass ceiling at Citicorp, as the horrified staff, including Felicia, bear witness. Spider-Man has shards of glass poking out of his back. It's incredibly violent. Vulture impales Spider-Man in the shoulders with one of his wing blades, twisting it to torture the web slinger. Ready to finally go in for the kill, Spider-Man manages to break the blade, push Vulture off with him landing on a vertical pipe, partially impaled. Vulture then flies off to his death, Felicia having witnessed all of it. So I'm guessing either Felicia recognized her father as the Vulture, or she just knew already. Drama. But killing off the main villain halfway into the film? That's pretty out there. I'm kind of impressed by that. So now, believing Spider-Man to have killed her father, Felicia Hardy dons the identity of the Vultress to avenge her now deceased Wait a minute, where have I heard this before? Did they really just speed run through the Norman and Harry arcs in the original trilogy? Well, that's a little derivative, don't you think? In a final battle, Vultress has Peter defeated but chooses to spare him. She then moves to Europe for some reason. And after discovering that Peter cheated on her, Mary Jane moves to LA to pursue an acting career. Realizing there's nothing left to do now, and ready to start again, Peter gives up being Spider-Man and finally moves on. So, all things considered, there are small elements here that I like and could in some ways be reworked. Putting Peter and MJ's relationship to bed would be a smart move, but definitely smarter at the beginning of the film, allowing MJ to go off on her own and be her own person. Yes, Mary Jane is Peter's endgame, she's the definitive love interest, but let's be real, Raimi's MJ is a very different person from comic MJ. She's much more complicated, and her relationship with Peter is too. There aren't a great deal of ways that those two could really work. But she's also Peter's very first love, and so much has happened between the two of them. Not to mention that Peter's love for her always felt a bit more like infatuation than anything else. Plus, Marvel Comics editorial really doesn't seem to agree with the fans that MJ is Peter Parker's endgame. You can pull them apart all we want. You can introduce as many Pauls and as many kids as you want. It's not going to work. MJ is Peter's definitive love interest. Either way, I think a fresh start for both Raimi Peter and Raimi MJ would be a really good place to go for both of them. The idea of ending Spider-Man 4 with Peter having at last moved on from the pursuit of Mary Jane and Spider-Man, the world now his oyster, his life ready to begin, it's a fair place to end things. That said, allegedly there were hopes for a 5th and 6th Spider-Man sequel at Sony, so this would be an especially awkward continuation from Spider-Man 3. After Spider-Man 3, Peter and MJ's relationship either needs to be moved to the background in a healthy place or put to bed entirely. An affair would have been a horrendous way to go that would undermine the relationship that stood at the forefront of the previous 3 films. An affair cheapens it. Growing apart doesn't. And if Peter were to just have this affair, it would just make him immensely unlikable. After a film where the whole point of the film was that Peter becomes unlikable before redeeming himself. As mentioned before as well, Vulture and Vultress feels incredibly similar to what was done with the Green Goblin and the New Goblin. Except here, we don't have 3 films to get to know these characters. In terms of Spider-Man villains cameoing in a montage, it's one of those things where if these cameos were a complete surprise, it'd be sweet. But if they were to officially announce, say, Bruce Campbell as Mysterio, only for it to be a mere cameo, well, hey, I know that Venom fans were left disappointed by Venom's 15 minutes of screen time in Spider-Man 3. Mysterio is my favorite comic book villain. Imagine my disappointment if they advertised Mysterio and it were just a cameo. Sony are kind of known for giving these things away in marketing as well. Sure, they kept Venom somewhat close to their chest in Spider-Man 3, but they still showed Peter ditching the black suit in the trailers, meaning that, yeah, as soon as you sat down in the cinema, you knew that black suit wasn't a permanent fixture. I mean, hey, if you have any familiarity with Spider-Man, you know it's not a permanent fixture, but, you know, movies can be different, and you're not making these things strictly for the fans either. Alright, enough ranting about Spider-Man 3's trailer. As it stands, you can make these things work, but honestly, I wasn't too fond of this version of Spider-Man 4 conceptually, and if this is what Sam Raimi was saying no to, I completely get it. I'd probably say no to it too. It must have come along to at least a small degree though, as we have this stunning image here of a maquette depicting John Malkovich in the Vulture costume. Once again, a very comic-faithful design in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man universe, with the only real deviation design-wise being the New Goblin, but even so, it was more of an original character kind of incarnation of Green Goblin than anything else. Also courtesy of comic writer Ken Penders. Yes, that, Ken Penders, we have this image of a practical Vulture wing prop being made. So even if this wouldn't be the story they'd go with, they did get to some actual practical props for the Vulture. Now, ditching the Black Cat persona in favor of Vultress was also a bizarre decision. Why not just make Vulture's daughter an entirely new character in that case? At least someone not burdened with the expectation of becoming a fan-favorite vigilante. Well, I guess plans really do change, as Sam Raimi did go on to say later down the line that Black Cat and Spider-Man would work together as a team. So, presumably, yeah, the Vulture's angle either got reworked or ditched. Still, the idea of Vulture getting killed off at the midway point of the film, I don't hate that idea. Although, okay, a few things. It would be Spider-Man's action here that would inadvertently lead to the Vulture's death. This isn't like being killed by his own attack or him jumping into a pumpkin bomb explosion. This is Spider-Man kicking the Vulture off of a building to save his own life. I doubt this would have sat too well with people. However, I mean, what choice does Peter really have here? And it's not like Spider-Man had the intent to kill Vulture here either, just to push him off. Perhaps we shouldn't have Spider-Man and Vulture in such a violent fight, or such a do-or-die situation, but at the same time, I fully support these storytellers testing the limits of these characters. The angle of this, though, that I would take issue with is yet another Spider-Man villain gets offed. I think by the time Spider-Man 4 would roll around, we'd definitely start to see a formula emerge and certain plot points growing a lot more tired. The tradition of the villain uncovering Peter's identity, them dying, them having some kind of personal connection to Peter before they become villains, a pattern was definitely starting to emerge around Spider-Man 3, and it probably would have grown pretty stale by Spider-Man 4. Looking back at Henderson's storyboards, I think the best thing about Spider-Man 4 would have been the aerial battles between Spider-Man and Vulture. The stakes are always high when you're fighting in the sky. Also in development was a Spider-Man 4 video game, with different development studios working on the versions for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, and the Wii versions separately. Production on these games would have begun pretty much as soon as Spider-Man 4 was announced. The procedure for Spider-Man movie tie-in games went in a way that a Spider-Man game would be made with a small selection of villains who would not appear in the film, and then the film's villains would be added to the game last as production of the film nears its end, so that you don't end up with contradictions between the games and the movies themselves. And from the looks of things, the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 version of this game was focusing a lot on aerial combat, as Spider-Man takes like 20 minutes to defeat a helicopter. This engine would go on to be used in the Prototype game series, so it wasn't all a massive waste. Fasting forward, in an interview with the Rolling Stone in early 2022 around the release of the Raimi-directed Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Sam Raimi stated that while Vulture was considered for Spider-Man 4, he did have other ideas in mind, for Kraven the Hunter and Mysterio, hinting possibly at maybe a slightly larger role for Bruce Campbell, but also stating that Spider-Man is an agile trickster of the sky and Kraven is the ultimate hunter. So I'm thinking that could lead to a unique dichotomy between Spider-Man and the villain, facing off against someone less physically powerful than himself, but more tactical. So this would give us a little insight as to later versions of Spider-Man 4 and how they were shaping up. This may also give a little credence to a rumor that Mr. Ditkovich would turn out to be a retired Kraven the Hunter. I'd hate that. Raimi has said that letting go of Spider-Man 4 was pretty devastating for him, and it's something that he thinks about still to this day. Following the release of Spider-Man No Way Home in 2021, many fans began speculating a possible return to Spider-Man for Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire. While no plans are in place, Sam Raimi has said that he'd be all too happy to return, with Tobey Maguire in tow, who has also expressed interest in returning. Does this mean that a Spider-Man 4 is likely? Well, there's certainly money to be made. It all just depends on how willing Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures are to have more than one live-action Spider-Man in theaters, and how it would work with Sony and Marvel Studios and their agreement for how Spider-Man is used. To me, it sounds like so soon after Spider-Man 3, Sam Raimi was feeling a lot of pressure to really get Spider-Man 4 as good as he could, and that pressure will have only made proceedings rockier and rockier. Now, over a decade after Spider-Man 4 was slated to release, thinking optimistically, perhaps Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire would be ready to take us for at least one more ultimate spin. Time will tell. At the same time, I've said myself that I personally felt that Spider-Man 3 was a great ending to the franchise, and a much better ending than what we discussed today, if that ever came to be. But not everyone feels the same as I do. I think I may even be in the minority on that one. So, it's understandable why Spider-Man fans would still be pining for a fourth feature film. With that said, fortunately, and obviously to anyone who has been living under a rock these past couple of years, Spider-Man 3 was not the last we'd see of Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker, which we will discuss later in the retrospective, but at the same time, this wasn't the last we'd see of a few plot threads from Spider-Man 4 either. Whether or not this was intentional, there are a few similarities between Spider-Man 4 and the first entry to the MCU Spider-Man's adventures, Spider-Man Homecoming, where Vulture is the main adversary, and the love interest Liz Allen is revealed to be the daughter of Adrian Toomes. Shocker also factors into this one, as he was going to have a cameo in Spider-Man 4. Now, if you really want to see an adaptation of Spider-Man 4 as we understood it, you might just be in luck, as a crowd-funded Spider-Man 4 project by High Mountain Studios seeks to adapt and bring a lot of the original Spider-Man 4's ideas to life in the form of a fan film. No, it won't include Tobey Maguire. No, it isn't directed by Sam Raimi, but it's a labor of love from the fans to the Raimi Spider-Man universe, and might just be a means of seeing this story brought to life, albeit in a lower budget capacity. Remember, be realistic with your expectations. It's not necessarily going to be up to Hollywood standards, but fan films are still absolutely worth checking out, purely for the love and creativity that can go into them. For now, that's where we close the book on Spider-Man 4. I would love to return to the subject of Spider-Man 4 someday with an actual tangible movie that I can watch, but for now, we can only speculate. Next time, we'll be looking at a project that almost ended up very much like Spider-Man 4 did, but in this case, we actually got to witness the train crash. Next time, we'll be talking about when Spider-Man crash-landed in Broadway with Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. So what do you guys think? What do you think about Spider-Man 4? What do you think of this video? Comment below and discuss. And as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, be sure to hit subscribe, hit the like button. And if you want your name in the credits of all my videos, you can do so by pledging a single $1 on my Patreon. Link is in the description below. And now for the patrons donating $10 or more a month, the literal shoutouts. Ladies and gentlemen, Kale Bennett! Dick Jordan! KK! Legendary Ray Ray! Adam Mars! Missing Dr. S.P. Dr. S. Pending! Sergio! And so is the Skeptic! And for those in the $5 tier, we have SSS06, Dazzle Fizzle, and Council of Geeks. Thank you folks so much for your unbelievable generosity. And as for the rest of you out there, thank you so much for watching, guys, and have a great day.